The country's power crisis is likely to worsen by this weekend as the West African gas pipeline company WAPCO hints it will cut gas supply to the Volta River Authority by midnight Friday.
Hopeful they are taking appropriate actions to prevent curtailment. Otherwise, WAPCO is contractually obligated to curtail deliveries to VRA as of 0 hours on Friday, the 16th of October.
This follows a warning by former VRA boss Mr. Rekobrobi that danger looms for the country's power supply if gas supply by WAPCO is cut. So how did VRA allow the country to be thrown into this situation? What happens to the already erratic supply of power if indeed gas supply is cut? What is government doing to ensure the country is not thrown into darkness? This is today's big story. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Now, the Volta River Authority is set to owe Gas more than $182 million and the Ghana National Gas Company about $150 million, a situation which is said to be crippling operations of the two companies. Now, Ghana has a deal with Nigeria to receive a contractual 120 million standard cubic feet of gas daily. However, government of Ghana has in the past held several discussions with Nigeria over the payment of the long-standing debt. The threat means that thermal units in the country will have to compete for the 100 million standard cubic feet of gas from the Tuabo gas plant. The country will also have to start shopping for light crude oil to replace gas if Gas goes ahead with its decision. Managing Director of WAPCO, Walter Perez, said he is aware of the untold consequences the hard decision will bring on Ghana, but adds WAPCO also needs to survive.
Since August 2014, VRA has received natural gas and pipeline-related transportation services totaling $231 million through the West African Gas Pipeline, otherwise known as the WAGP. As of today, VRA has paid only $50 million of this amount. Of the outstanding balance of $181 million, VRA owes $103 million to WAPCO, with the balance being owed to the other parties in the gas supply chain. Ladies and gentlemen, WAPCO has regularly engaged VRA, the Ghana Public Utilities and Regulatory Commission, the PERC, the relevant ministries, and even the highest levels of government to find a solution to the situation before it reached crisis level. Unfortunately, these efforts have not achieved the desired result. Just 1 month ago, WAPCO received a formal notification from VRA's gas shipper, Gas, that deliveries to VRA should be curtailed effective 16th of October 2015. That's this Friday. In doing so, Gas informed WAPCO of the intent of one of its major gas suppliers, Nigeria National Petroleum Company, NNPC, to curtail gas supply as a result of Gas being in payment default due to the inability of VRA to settle its gas supply and transportation invoices. We are very certain those in positions of authority in Ghana are fully aware of this information, and we are hopeful they are taking appropriate actions to prevent curtailment. Otherwise, WAPCO is contractually obligated to curtail deliveries to VRA as of 0 hours on Friday, the 16th of October. WAPCO management is keenly aware and acutely sensitive to the effect that this directive from Gas could have on power generation in Ghana. We find it unfortunate that the VRA debt situation has been allowed to deteriorate to the point where it now jeopardizes WAPCO's very existence as a company. And in doing so, it also jeopardizes the only viable option of providing sufficient, on-time, offtake assurance for Ghana's 10 and Sankofa developments. I'd like to emphasize that we remain hopeful in spite of the current crisis, as we believe the WAGP remains critical energy infrastructure for Ghana. Further, we are firm in our belief that the WAGP is vital to the on-time and lowest cost delivery of Ghana's indigenous gas resources. To that end, WAPCO will continue to dialogue with the relevant authorities and trust that WAPCO, a company in which Ghana owns significant shares, will not be allowed to go under.
Government says it is unaware of the threat, adding it will be unfair on the part of WAPCO. Join us, editor Israel has been speaking to the VRA and now joins me in the studio. Hi, Israel.
Hello.
So why is VRA deciding not to pay? I mean, accumulating this, that knowing the grave consequences that comes with it.
Okay, it's not a case that the VRA is unwilling to pay. It's about its ability to pay.
Okay.
VRA finds itself in a very difficult situation because VRA has also taken the gas, generated electricity, supplied it to ECG,
right,
which has also supplied it to our homes.
Okay.
Now, ECG has been able to pay VRA.
Right.
And so if ECG is unable to pay VRA, then VRA also can't get to pay WAPCO. Now, then you'd also want to ask, why is ECG not paying VRA?
Yeah.
ECG too will tell you that one, government also owes them, and government is supposed to pay.
A lot.
Then ECG also has its own issues with being able to collect bills or for people who have consumed the electricity or electricity
we're
sold
now
to
running prepaid.
Not everybody runs. Not everybody has a prepaid system. So some people have credit meters, but there are people who owe ECG, or ECG is unable to collect all the monies from them. And then there are also all these inefficiencies within the setup itself that doesn't avail itself. So if ECG is unable to pay VRA can't raise the money to pay WAPCO.
But
so
it looks like bad news, and I think there's danger. I mean, what are the implications of this decision?
Well, yes, it's serious because we're getting, even though we have Ghana gas,
right,
and I keep on saying this, the gas from Etuabo is unable to go all the way to Tema.
Okay.
It can only go as far as Abuate.
Right.
Now, the gas from Nigeria flows through Tema and comes all the way to Abuate.
Okay.
So we can get gas from Nigeria to supply both Tema and Abuate. Ghana gas can't do that.
Right.
Now, Ghana gas, again, doesn't have enough gas to even send it all the way to Tema.
Okay.
So if we have, and most of the plants that are operating in Tema, in the Tema enclave, rely on gas.
Yeah.
They can't use crude oil or diesel. Some of them can, but most of them
Isn't
can't.
that too expensive?
Yeah, Asogli, for instance, can't use any. It's not dual fuel. It's only gas.
Okay.
Now, apart from the fact that it's also expensive. So if we're not getting gas in Tema to power the plants,
right,
we're losing a significant chunk of our generational capacity.
Right.
Our generation capacity will slump considerably, which means that it's going to worsen the already power crisis that we're enduring. It has been improved considerably in the last few weeks,
right,
but if this happens, it's going to get worse.
Okay, we'll be trying to reach the Managing Director General, Public Affairs of WAPCO to answer some questions, because I'm aware that VRA is saying that WAPCO will be unfair to decide that they're cutting gas supply. You've been speaking with them.
I've been speaking to VRA. Of course, they don't want to come up publicly to speak to these issues, but they say that, one, they feel it's unfair for WAPCO because they've been having discussions with WAPCO all this while. They've been talking to NGAS and they're in negotiations, and so they feel it's unfair that you issue a threat at the time that we're still engaging you. And then they also make reference to instances in the past where WAPCO has been unable to deliver on its contractual obligations. So WAPCO is supposed to supply a certain amount of gas
at a certain point of time,
to VRA.
Okay.
It hasn't been able to fulfill that obligation all throughout. And there were times where there were disruptions in the gas pipeline. And VRA says that at that point in time, or during those times where you're not supplying us enough gas as we're supposed to have, we had to use monies to buy crude oil, which is more expensive, to run our plants.
Okay.
If we had constant supply, we may not have been buying so much crude oil.
To run at a loss.
Yes, and so we have also borne a bit of the brunt as a result of your inability to supply us as much gas. So they look at all of these things and they say it's rather a bit unfair for government, for WAPCO to want to say that. But I also know that the Power Minister and the VRA Chief Executive will be traveling to Nigeria to try and sort out these issues tomorrow.
Okay, I was about to ask what government is doing, but if they're going to try to, I
going
hope
to try
they
to
do that before the deadline, because believe me,
that's my understanding. It's going to happen, and they'll be traveling to Nigeria. I would want to believe that they'll come back with some good news.
Let's get on to the phone lines and speak with Harriet Wilson Rekobrobe. She is Managing Director General, Public Affairs of WAPCO. Good evening. You're welcome on today's big story. I think we lost her there. Israel, one more word from you. In case, hello, Mrs. Rekobrobe. If you can hear me, you're on today's big story. Hello, Harriet. I think we're having some hitches with our telephone lines, but in case they're not able to meet the deadline, what will be the danger for us?
Well, I've also been speaking to you would expect that naturally they're going to cut supply, but I've also been speaking to industry players who say that it's not very likely that they're going to cut supply, as in cut it abruptly, because there's going to be some gas still flowing through the pipeline. It may not be at the pressures that will deliver the quantities that we've been expecting. So probably it may come down to, they currently do as much as 120 million standard cubic feet of gas a day, and they've been quite regular in delivering that. It may probably come down to about 30 million standard cubic feet of gas, which may not be enough for the plants that have been relying on it, but it's still, they can still work with that.
Let's get on to the phone lines again. I'm told Harriet Wilson Rekobrobe is on the line. Good evening, madam, and you're welcome on today's big story.
Good evening.
Well, the VRA says it's unaware of this threat. And how do you announce such a threat without first discussing with the partners involved?
What threat are you talking about?
To cut gas supply by Friday midnight.
Well, there is no threat from WAPCO to cut gas supply by midnight on Friday.
Okay.
There is a letter that was written, which WAPCO was copied, and it was issued by NGAS, that is the supplier of gas to VRA.
Right.
And they indicated to us that due to the debt situation, they had indicated certain conditions which had to be met, and that if those conditions were not met, they were directing WAPCO as the transporters of their gas to curtail gas supply to VRA.
Well, what do you say to VRA describing your decision as unfair, in the sense that there have been times you also couldn't meet your deadline in delivering gas to the authority, and that even made them buy crude oil, which is very expensive. They had to bear with you. Don't you think it's only fair to to reciprocate in times like this?
No, you didn't understand what I said. WAPCO is not doing anything. WAPCO is a transporter taking action based on what NGAS
is saying. Okay.
NGAS is a supplier.
Okay.
In those times when the gas quantities were low,
right,
WAPCO was obliged to transport whatever it is that NGAS asked WAPCO to transport.
Okay.
And in fact, it was not in WAPCO's interest for the gas quantity to be low.
Okay.
Because all the revenue on the quantities of gas that is transported. So it is the interest of WAPCO for high volumes of gas to be transported.
Okay.
So that we can make the money, to run the system. So we, at the time that the gas quantities were low. We were facilitating. We had a series of fora and so on to try and bring people together, because as a company that is transporting gas, we wanted many shippers and we wanted quantities of gas to be transported.
Well,
but there is a shipper, yes, there's a shipper that is supposed to be telling us that we are giving you this quantity. Give the quantity to our customer, that is DRE.
Right.
So if that shipper says we are, in effect, from a certain day, curtail the supply to the customer, then it's not WAPCO's fault.
Couldn't WAPCO intervene in this sense, since you have been the liaison between the two parties?
We have been trying, but the thing is, it's a difficult situation. It is a very unfortunate situation, and I know that, you know, the DRA and other officials of government have been trying very hard to resolve the issue, because if you have a company that is existing, you know, on a certain source of revenue, and that company doesn't get that revenue anymore, the company becomes bankrupt or the company collapses. So,
right, well, you are still on air.
Talking about WAPCO. WAPCO is performing a service to NGAS, and WAPCO requires NGAS to pay. You know, we are transporting gas on behalf of NGAS, so NGAS has to pay WAPCO for the transportation service.
Well,
so long as NGAS is transporting, you know, if they tell us, as we are doing today, you know, 100 million transported,
right,
we will continue. And since August 2014 last year, we have been transporting because NGAS has been putting the gas into the system, in spite of the fact that we are not making any money, and so we have had to cut our budget so that we are able to operate with the little revenue that we are getting from CED, the transportation of gas to CED. We as WAPCO haven't taken any action because we understand the issues, and we're hoping that the problem would be resolved. And we have been engaging with the VI to say, so what are you doing about the NGAS debt? And they have been indicating to us what they have been doing.
Well,
so what we are hoping is that the engagement, because we know it's not like, you know, government is sitting down allowing this to happen.
Okay.
So what we are hoping is that, you know, the engagements that they are having with NGAS will be successful, so that before the deadline that NGAS has stated, they will come back to us, WAPCO, to say, okay, based on ABC,
now you can supply gas.
Exactly.
Right. Many thanks to you, Mrs. Rekubrobi, for your time on today's big story. Also with me in the studio is Head of Policy Unit of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Ishmael Aka. Welcome to today's big story.
Thank you.
You know, we started this conversation some few days ago, but this is bad news for the country. I know government is planning to, or has begun negotiations with NGAS, but in case it doesn't go well, what are the dangers?
Well, I believe that we shouldn't have gotten here at the first place. We've experienced this before, and getting here this time with this deadline, it's a very unfortunate situation. The government is trying though, but in case that we don't succeed, what it means is that they are going to probably cut gas to Ghana, which I believe will not happen.
Okay, we all believe so.
Yes, but if it happens, it means we're going back to the old 24 hours off, 12 hours on. VRA may be forced to get loan to buy light crude oil to power some of the thermal plants and some of these things. So they're still going to increase the cost, the discomfort of the doom saw, and we'll go back to the early days of the doom, which would be very unfortunate.
But you have been following events. How did we get here? Because, of course, if we're monitoring our activities, we should know that we're getting to the red light, and so we should take some concrete measures. How did we get here?
Yeah, I think that when you look at the power sector, we have the generators, VRA, Asogli, other IPPs.
Right.
We also have the transmitter, that is Gridco. Okay. Then we have the distributor, in this case ECG and Netco in the north.
Okay.
Now, when you produce by law, ECG is the official off-taker, so you have to sell to ECG.
Okay.
ECG will sell to the consumer, and they will come and pay you.
Right.
This is very simple. However, for some time now, VRA will produce, give it to ECG, and ECG will sell, and they cannot pay. There are two reasons for this. The first one is that the government is a major consumer of power.
Right.
The government buys other government agencies, they use the power, they don't pay.
Okay.
In the past, because we're depending so much on hydro, that was not an issue, because hydro, though we need money for investment and other maintenance, we're not buying fuel. We use running water.
Okay.
But recently, VRA is using gas or even light crude oil, which is very expensive. So that is the issue now. So ECG owes VRA, as at March 2015, around 1.2 billion. I mean, the government owes ECG around 1.2 billion. That is very huge.
Okay.
So that is one of the major problems.
One of the major problems you say is that government owes and needs to pay.
Yes.
Don't you think it's about time we stop politicizing issues and decide that let's look for money? I know about Compact 2 that we signed in the US and all of that. Why are we still owing ECG and ECG cannot pay VRA and all of us are in this mess?
Yeah, the Compact 2 is to more like help us improve the distributional system, not to pay debt. Government has used power. In fact, agencies, universities. Take a look at Kofodia Poly.
Right.
We disconnected the electricity to them because they were not paying. They went for loan to buy fuel for their generators.
Okay.
Why don't you go for loan to pay your because debt, so the electricity from ECG is cheaper than those from generators. So this is the issue. I believe that we should, for now, the government should have, say, the next 4 years.
Okay.
Every year I'm paying 25% of the debt to ECG.
Exactly.
At the same 4 years, what you do is that you try to take off from almost paying more like the electricity bills of government-subvented institutions.
Okay.
So, for instance, the first year universities are going off. When you are giving them their subvention, you add their electricity bills. You force them to use prepaid meters.
Okay.
Now, if you are a vice chancellor in a university and we give you 100 cedis a month for your electricity, I think that you encourage efficiency.
Okay.
But now the government says, I'll pay. We use it and they don't pay.
They don't pay.
ECG becomes the bad boy because for some political reasons, you want to go and disconnect, for instance, University of Ghana.
Right.
A big man will call you, don't do it. And the president or the government appointed the MD, you answer to him. You have to stop. So this is this is what we are experiencing now.
I know you are not a member of government, but I'm forced to ask you this question because you've been conducting research. Is it that government doesn't want to pay, or government simply doesn't have the money?
I think that government can get the money to pay
if
they think that it is very important and we have to pay. They will get the money to pay. I mean, for instance, when we had our oil, and when we were doing our planning, the law stated that take 4 areas, invest in those areas for 4 years, 3 years. Then after the 3 years, you can take additional areas. If you think electricity is very important and you owe so much and you need additional funds, and oil revenue being additional funds, electricity would have been one of the areas.
Right.
But that was not the case.
Okay.
We go for loans for other things, road construction, which are good. But we don't hear that we're going for a loan or something to come and settle this debt.
Maybe they're running away from being accused of going for excessive loans.
No, we take the loans. Whether it's excessive, we take it. So why don't you? Because electricity is very fundamental. I mean, if we don't have light, so many things go wrong. We want to industrialize. We want to create jobs. We want investors. We travel the whole world. I mean, Ghana Investment Promotion Council, you go in everywhere. Oh, investors should come. They come in and don't get light. They go back. So we should be serious with electricity. Pay the debt. Take your hands off government-subvented institutions, and I think that ECG can be efficient.
I can tell you that this decision is not going down well with all of us. I mean, we've been to the streets of Accra. Let's listen to what the people on the streets are saying. I mean, getting to know that they could go back to the darkness. I mean, those era of doom. So let's listen to views of the public.
First thing I think Gridco should do, it should raise funds, even if it's possible for the government to intervene on the behalf of Gridco, so they can pay quick, so that the lights will be sustained. Actually, we even want them to do something to improve the current situation. So if they're on Friday, they are going to worsen it. That means it's going to be bad for the country. It's going to affect us a lot. Our economic development, everything is going to go down.
If they pay them, fine. If they don't pay them and it's blackout, I don't have problem. When the light is on, I'll do whatever I need quickly. If it is out, I don't have problem.
I think the government has to put in certain procedures so that they can take that cost. At least from Friday. Friday is too close. And students are suffering. Polytechnics are going through difficulties because they are not getting light. You see, hospitals everywhere, and those affect everybody. The president even admits that it is a very big challenge. So at least the government should take that challenge up and just talk to them, the parties involved, so that at least they can, if they will extend that day, so that payments will be done later. But this Friday, I think it's too early.
Well, it's a very unfortunate situation because we have already faced a very tough aspect of the Dumso, and we thought it is getting better. But to hear that around Saturday or from Saturday going, we are going to have serious Dumso, to me it is a disadvantage because I'm a teacher. Each and every day I iron. And after I have come back from school I go through my books using light. I mark papers, so it's going to affect me. In fact, it is going to make me look not neat. I'm going to wear my dress on iron. And I can't check the school children too much because the Dumso also affects them.
Trust in the president and Gridco themselves, and I think by Friday they'll be able to service the debt and it will be paid. That's the trust I have in the president and the Gridco, the institution itself.
What makes you have that trust?
Because we see a president always setting in to solve a problem. And most of the time when this institution face problems, we always see the president coming in to make sure that the problems are solved. And looking at the current situation and what power can do for us, I don't think the president, whom I trust, can say that for those things to happen. So I know he'll set in before Friday.
Okay, so let's go.
I think after Friday there will be a solution to it.
And what makes you think there will be a solution?
Because I don't think the country will be there till without it paying, the bill.
Indeed, if it happens that NGAS decides to cut power, you can tell how all of us will be in danger. Let me ask you my final question. What is the single most efficient strategy VRA can adopt to avert some of these situations?
Well, I believe that going forward, ECG will take power and they cannot pay, then probably VRA should contract Gridco to distribute power on their behalf.
Rather than ECG.
But I think that the government has gone for a concession. But even before the concession, as I said, the fundamental issue is that let us pay what we owe ECG, the government and individuals. ECG should pay VRA and VRA will pay WAPCO and NGAS. The final one is that, again, when ECG takes the distributional fees, in fact, what we pay, electricity bills, it contains generational fees, distributional fees, and even the transmission fees. ECG should first pay the generational fees because we paid for the power. So give VRA what is due them before you come and take your wages and administrative charges and some of this. I think it can help.
And on top of that, they're asking for 200% increment. For what?
Yeah, for
when
that,
you are not paying your...
Yeah, that one, we can't do it. I think the strategy is that they need money to do investment, which is good.
They should go and borrow.
So, no, not to even borrow. Go and take what belongs to you. Go and take that and invest.
Settle your...
When you invest and we are having reliable power supply, come for the increment, we'll give it to you.
And we'll give it to you. Many thanks to you, Dr. Ishmael Aka. He's from the Africa Center for Africa Center for Energy Policy. We've been talking about the danger of gas, cutting gas supply to Ghana, and we've been assured by WAPCO and government that they are into some discussion or negotiation with gas to avert this decision. Hopefully, we will meet the deadline and the country will not be thrown into darkness. My name is Barima. Have a great evening.